Welcome back to the CLASP podcast series, where we spotlight the powerful intersection of climate action and philanthropy in the Caribbean. I'm your host, Derval Bazi. Joining us from Freeport, Grand Bahama, is Rashema Ingraham, an accomplished conservation advocate and the dynamic leader of Bonefish and Tarpon Trust Bahamas program. With a deep commitment to community engagement, public policy, and regional collaboration, Rashima is not only shaping conservation efforts in the Bahamas, but also extending her impact across Belize, Mexico, and the wider Caribbean. Welcome to the podcast, Rashima.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I am excited for the work that you've been doing and for the opportunity to share the work that we're doing on your platform.
So Rashima, your work, as I mentioned briefly in your intro, is deeply rooted in the communities and coastlines of the Bahamas. So can you tell us about how your personal and professional journey led you into the sphere of climate advocacy, and also why marine conservation matters so deeply in our Caribbean context?
So I will start off by saying why the ocean life means so much to me. My maternal heritage is within the small island of Bimini, which is in the Bahamas as well, but my grandfather and his brothers and sisters were all people of the sea. He was a fisherman. He, of course, did some entertainment at the hotels during the day or the night when he wasn't on the waters. But my life and my experience with him was as a fisherman. And knowing that while we lived in Grand Bahama, he would even package fresh fish and put them on the boat or the plane for us to have. So there was always a connection with my grandfather and my relatives in Bimini and the water. And that's when I really had my first introduction to being out there in the Bay of Bimini and experiencing what was really in our waters and the beauty of it and the diversity of the marine species. That meant so much to me, even though I didn't realize the impact that it would have on me as an adult during that childhood experience that kind of shaped the way that I appreciated nature at that time. And it evolved where I found peace and tranquil walking through mangroves or kayaking through mangroves or just even walking through national parks. And I wanted that experience to be available, accessible, and well-maintained for my children. And so I have 2 kids now, and to be able to share those experiences with them, either through snorkeling or kayaking. My daughter is an open water scuba certified diver. For her to be able to go into the water and experience that life too, it really changes one's perspective on our connection to the ocean. For the Caribbean, we are small islands where we're atolls, where many different shapes of islands or clusters, whether volcanic or limestone, but the majority of our resources or our wealth is in the ocean that surrounds us or the sea that surrounds us. And that is really what connects from the Bahamas all the way down to Trinidad and Tobago. It connects us to the waters that surrounds us. And it's important for us to be able to speak in places where we can for our children and for the people in our small communities or our larger cities to also be able to access those same experiences that I experienced with my grandfather.
And that, in essence, is what sustainability is all about, ensuring that what we enjoy today, generations to come also have the ability to enjoy similar, even better experience. As you mentioned, your people being people of the sea, here in the Caribbean, we really are ocean states with our marine environment extending far beyond our land masses, and that's why we definitely need to have a greater appreciation for the marine space and definitely be better stewards of our oceans.
Yeah, definitely. I think the story that I have, there are maybe so many people across the Caribbean that have that similar story, who work in similar spaces like I do, where we can advocate for the protection of certain species, ensure that policies are in place in government and in non-government organizations, where there's some integration of conservation, of advocacy, and protection. And so that's really what connects us, and I think we need to be mindful of that. I'm proud of the fact that we share similar stories and work together, so that our voices come together and have a much more resounding presence when we speak in those international arenas.
Yes, and that has been a recurrent theme throughout the CLASP series in terms of the value and the urgent need for greater partnership, greater integration throughout the Caribbean region as we seek to address our common challenges. So, this is the CLASP podcast series where we are exploring the intersection of philanthropy and climate action. But we know that on-the-ground implementation requires local leadership and also trust. So can you tell us about a recent initiative or partnership through Bonefish and Tarpon Trust that demonstrates the power of community-engaged conservation, and also how philanthropy has supported or maybe could better support this work?
Yes, a very important topic to be discussing, because I am sure that many can learn from these experiences where philanthropy and access to funding intersects and provides more opportunity for communities. BTT has been doing work in the Bahamas for many years, and even in that over a decade worth of work, we have really engaged guides. We've found ways to strengthen our relationship with guides. The guides have been with us when we were tagging bonefish, as we were mapping out the bonefish migration for pre-spawning. They have always found ways to help strengthen the research work that we have been doing. And just speaking specifically about the Bahamas, after the passage of Hurricane Dorian, we realized that the mangrove ecosystems that the guides and the bonefish and the fishing communities depended on really took a hit after the passage of the storm. And it was then that we saw an opportunity to bring guides and community together, not just guides who were helping us for specific science research, but guides and communities, because everyone took a loss after that storm, especially knowing the vital importance of the mangroves. They provide coastal barriers from storm surges, but they're habitat for many marine species, and a wonderful nursery. So how were we going to be able to really help to revitalize the mangrove ecosystem? So we saw guides, we saw women and children in the community, we saw schools, and we saw environmental groups and small civil society groups who wanted to all come together to do something to benefit nature or to assist nature. And Bonefish and Tarpon Trust was first to be able to go out and assess the mangrove damage after Dorian. But after that assessment, we had the opportunity to connect with some of the other organizations in country who saw the need to do the same thing. So we formed a partnership with the Waterkeepers Bahamas and Perry Institute for Marine Science, and that partnership formed the Bahamas Mangrove Alliance. So we had NGOs who were committed to community involvement, education, guides engagement, and science all coming together and bringing so many faces of stakeholders together to plant mangroves. And this has impressively been one of the greatest community action-led restoration projects in the Bahamas, where all of those individual stakeholders came together to plant on 51 sites in Grand Bahama and in Abaco. And to this day, we've collectively planted over 300,000 mangroves in those 51 sites. So that really speaks to bringing community together. It speaks to the power of a community engaged conservation project that's definitely one that we can celebrate. And I'm happy that Bonefish and Tarpon Trust has been able to walk side by side or lead where it can lead this initiative. And we're growing and we're continuing, and we definitely see how this has changed the way that the communities on Grand Bahama and Abaco and for the entire Bahamas now have a deeper appreciation for mangroves and all that's connected to it.
We know that mangroves are a critical natural defense when we speak about nature-based solutions. So I'm really happy to hear about the work of the Bahamas Mangrove Alliance. I know that in 2019, Hurricane Dorian really devastated islands in the Bahamas. Even as the 2025 hurricane season approaches, we do hope that we are spared the worst, but we also have to be prepared and definitely take the learnings from past experiences. And when we rebuild, the emphasis is on rebuilding better, building back better. So I'm also happy to hear about the emphasis on research and education and community involvement.
Yes, absolutely. So building back better, but building back better and together. I think that's where we've landed, and we see where it works, because everyone is able to add value to what it is that we're doing.
Yes, I love that, building back better and together. When we talk about climate change, it's often said that it amplifies existing inequalities. Rashima, how do you see the intersection of climate justice and gender equity showing up in your work? And also, what do you believe is most urgently needed to ensure fair and inclusive climate solutions for small island communities?
This is such an important point to really raise, climate injustice, because it happened here in the Bahamas, and it happens every hurricane season, either in the Bahamas or in Bermuda or Jamaica or any Caribbean country where at any time we can become climate refugees. But I just want to speak to the microcosm of the communities of McLeanstown and High Rock during Hurricane Dorian, where you have small pockets of fishing villages that may not necessarily have public facilities at a larger scale as the cities may have. So there may be clinics instead of hospitals. There may be small all-age schools instead of secondary or primary school buildings. There may not be universities. There may not be public offices like the National Insurance or National Security. So in those communities, there isn't much value when it comes to the public facilities there. And there may also not be like larger grocery stores, or there may be smaller convenience stores. So the need to really focus on rebuilding those villages may not necessarily be of high priority as it might be to building back a city. So even that, there's climate injustice because of the socioeconomic variances of those communities. But when you think about the fact that these are coastal communities, they're being inundated on a daily basis as the tide comes in and goes out, as the moon shifts from full to new moon. They're learning to adapt just based on their ancestral traditions or what they would have been able to make adjustments to in their lifestyle. But we're also not giving them the level of respect or support by walking side by side or getting a stronger needs assessment from them in terms of what it is that they really need, and how, as we're shifting through these cycles of impacts from climate change or sea level rise, how we can support them. And in these communities are women and children who are sticking to those traditional or bush medicine or natural teas remedies, because they may not be able to access the type of medical supplies. All of these things are issues that we're not really talking about when it comes to the inequality or the unjust behaviors that our governments or our local or central governments may not be recognizing. And I think that we need to pay attention to those coastal communities in particular, and really pay attention to what a needs assessment would mean for our response to emergencies or natural disasters, but also in those recovery efforts as well.
I truly believe that the key to building climate resilience is equity, providing resources to those that are most vulnerable and those that are, least able to respond or recover, and providing those resources with the intention of building their capacity to be able to withstand, and allowing them to participate in decision making, allowing them to lead in their own adaptation and resilience building.
Right. And simply just working along with organizations like Bonefish and Tarpon Trust and many others who have access to those communities, because you don't necessarily need a hospital or a university in every community or in every district. Well, not district, every community or neighborhood. But you do need to know what's available, and you do need to have some level of representation. And as difficult as it seems, a needs assessment would really help to formulate a community plan on many different levels. And because we have such a great relationship with guides and the communities that have been working with us on certain projects, to be able to build on a project where we would be able to access some of that information and use our resources to all deposit into that community plan is something that we really should be looking at. Like, what are these availabilities from nonprofit organizations like Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, and how can it add value to connect these small villages, neighborhoods with what the central government's plans are to ensure that we're being inclusive and fair to all of our residents and visitors.
So, looking ahead, Rashima, for the funders, philanthropists, and change makers tuning in, what's your message about the importance of strategic partnerships in building a climate resilient future?
The message to funders, to policymakers, to all leaders as it relates to building a climate resilient future is collaboration and access. Collaboration on levels where we're able to use our strength through partnership to be able to provide a more inclusive approach to restoration, to policy recommendations and advocacy. and for it to be looked at as a source of strength and wealth of knowledge, and not adversarial at all to anything that policymakers may be developing in the pipeline. And for funders to also make consideration for those alliances or partnerships to be able to look at it as another community involved or community-led initiative where it really provides economic as well as accessible opportunities to schools, to churches, to civil society, to work together on projects, to work together on research that not only has value for one particular area or one industry, but also adds value to so many different facets, whether it's an improved educational system, because there are more internship opportunities, because there's available research opportunities, but to look at funding these projects more as a holistic approach rather than funding smaller projects where we're not able to have everyone's voice included in those grant-making efforts.
Thank you, Rashima, for sharing your powerful insights on environmental conservation, advocacy, and the protection of our marine ecosystems. Your work continues to shape a more resilient and sustainable Caribbean, and we are honored to have you as part of the CLASP podcast series.
Thank you, and have a beautiful time, and I look forward to more opportunities like this.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Visit bonefishtarpontrust.org to learn more about their work. And don't forget to explore the CLASP initiative at caraphilalliance.org/CLASP. Remember to subscribe to the Climate Conscious podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a little extra inspiration to take action for our planet. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and keep working toward a sustainable future.